Hello, group. I was so not planning on going live today, but I just got off one of the most awkward, weird phone calls I've ever had. And because I have a commitment to, keep it real with you all and tell you good or bad, I thought I would go through kind of how to end a relationship with a client who maybe isn't the right fit, but do it the right way. And why I'm talking to you about this today is because I was supposed to be kicking off a relationship with a new team member of mine today. And I, as a freelancer, of course, I work with clients, but I also have people who work on my digital team who I really treasure, and they are rock stars, and several of them are in this group, and I've worked with them for years, and it's really important to me that I have the right people on my team. And in your client, I'm sharing this with you because your clients feel the same way too. They should, right? If you're working with ideal clients, they should care about you being the right fit for them and vice versa. And I really do. I'm definitely not perfect as like a manager, as a client, but I really do try to always make my team members feel appreciated and really comfortable with what they're doing, and encourage them to give me pushback if something I've said doesn't make sense, if it's a bad idea, if they have too much on their plate, whatever it is. And I've been really lucky with the people who are currently on my team, and things have gotten busier lately. So I was in the position to hire someone new, and I was super excited about it, to kind of go forward with it. And I put a call to action out in a Facebook group and reached out to my own network and got over 100 applications for this position, right, to work with me virtually, and narrowed it down to the top 6. And then I interviewed those top 6 people, and 2 people were like clear good fits, right? And I want to share this with you for a number of reasons, not just because your clients should care about you and it being the right relationship forward, with them, and vice versa. But also because if you're in a bad situation that isn't the right fit, whether you're the client or the freelancer, you should know how to handle it professionally to end it before it gets worse. And there are a lot of different phases in the process when things can go wrong. I have interviewed people as a project manager or hiring for my own company, and they seemed perfect on paper, but they bombed the interview, or they did great on the interview, and then coming on into the position, they didn't have good communication or couldn't meet deadlines. And so there's a lot of points in the process when things can break down between freelancers and clients. And being aware of this, I say this, don't beat yourself up, but be aware of these possible breakdown points. Think about your client and where they're at. So today I'm actually putting on my client hat and sharing that perspective with you, because I now have an extra hour, because the phone call was so awkward that I wanted to wrap it up like ASAP. Like, oh, it was so weird. I wasn't expecting that. It was way more drama than I ever thought I was going to have, hiring a new team member. And like I said, I have people on my team who I've worked with for years, and love working with them and try to make it super easy. And I treat hiring for my digital team as really important, because it's not just that the person is going to work with me, they're going to work with my existing team members. And my existing team members are rock stars. They're super helpful. They're very smart at what they do. They're really experts in their fields. And I don't want to introduce like a bad apple into an already working ecosystem, right? So I'm very mindful when I hire. But I have to put on my client hat today, because this experience was so weird, and I want you to know it for your freelancer purposes, or if you're ever in a role as a project manager where you're hiring other clients, or you're the client and you're hiring someone and something just doesn't feel right, because either person can end the relationship before it even begins, right? In this situation that I dealt with today, there was a signed contract. I had prepaid for the work. Today was just the official kickoff day, and it was super awkward. I'm still a little bit blindsided by it. So that's part of the reason I wanted to do a live, was to kind of talk through this and process it. So there was a lot of drama surrounding one of the key roles for this particular virtual assistant position that kind of started last week, like cryptic emails that I was being sent from this person who hadn't even started yet, that went to the effect of, there's something wrong with this task and the way someone else has done it on your team, but I'm not going to explain what it is. And it's like, why would you send that to a client? Like, nobody wants to receive. I mean, my husband and I used to get on our respective parents and in-laws, because they would leave us voicemails like, something's happened, call me. Well, any person who gets a message like that, your mind goes to the worst. So for me to get a message last Thursday that was like, there's something wrong with this aspect of your business, we'll discuss it later. It was really cryptic and really put me in a weird place. Like, why is this relationship kicking off on this mysterious note? Like, why can't you just tell me what the problem is and we can figure it out together? And so that was probably red flag number one. And then on Sunday, yesterday was Sunday, I got a message from this person again that the original issue shared was like catastrophic and had caused this person a tremendous amount of pain and lost sleep and just all this stuff. And I was like, where is this coming from? Like, we haven't even officially started working together. I've just shared some passwords with you and, clued you in to some things about how to approach the project. So it's just really weird. And like, to get that, especially on a weekend, put me in as a client in a really awkward position. So if you're ever, so obviously, like, before I even had my kickoff call with this person today, I knew something was up, and I was really disappointed because I've been so excited to bring this person on board, and honestly so excited to get some things off my plate because things have been so busy the last couple of weeks. I've just felt like I'm running the gauntlet every week. So if you're feeling that way, either as a client or a freelancer, like something is off, there is a professional way to handle things, and then there are many, many unprofessional ways to handle things. And even if you're ending a relationship with a client, whether it's midstream of the project or before it even starts, please do it the professional way, even if the client has screwed you. Now, why would you do that? Because there's no need to burn bridges. Even if the client has wronged you, try to remain as professional as possible. You don't need one more person like out there being upset with you or disappointed or your name being tarnished in the marketplace for any reason. So even when I have fired the worst of the worst clients I've ever had, and I had a client my very first year I had to file a restraining order against, it was a firm, professional, this is the end of the relationship. So if you find yourself in that position, whether you're with a client, you're like, this is way different than what I expected, or I no longer have the time to do this, or I just don't like this person's communication style, please don't get into the dramatics of it with your client, because it's just adding another burden to their plate and adding more stress. So the phone call that I thought I was going to have today with this new team member was going to be to kick things off and get some questions answered. And instead it was an hour-long discussion about how the interpretation of this project was so stressful that this person hadn't eaten, slept, or enjoyed their weekend because of it. And it was a blindside to me, because it was like, first of all, we didn't even start until today. Like, why is this stressing you out? And I certainly didn't say, like, you must do this or it has to be done this way. So it's just really weird. Like, I felt totally blindsided on this phone call, and that it could have been handled a much better way. So if you're in that position, either as client or freelancer, you don't need to delve into all the details. If something isn't working, you can give a super generic reason and get out of the contract. You can even do this when you feel like things are crashing and burning with the person in question, and you can even still use this to get positive business in the future. Now, what do I mean by that? I've had to end client relationships with clients on Upwork where I ended it very firmly and professionally and was terrified of the review they might leave me on Upwork, and they left me 5 stars. I've ended it with clients off the Upwork platform, and it's led to business referrals in the future from people who were a better fit for me. So we may not have worked together, or we didn't work together long, but they referred me to someone else. So there's no reason to burn bridges unless you absolutely have to, like, unless this person is a total nightmare and you never want to hear from them again. Don't put your clients under the additional pressure and stress of hearing your life story and all the things that are going wrong. Even if there is something like super personal that's going on, I have a lot of responsibilities in my life and care for a family member who's disabled and all of that. And if I have an issue related to that with a prospective or a current client, I just simply say, I've got family things going on right now. Unfortunately, I'm going to be half a day late on this delivery, or I'm not available for a phone call today because XYZ. But I don't drag it into, let's have a really long conversation about everything why I'm upset as the freelancer, especially because your clients are busy people. They have a lot going on, and they are outsourcing for a reason. to get things off their plate, to reduce stress. So don't be an additional source of adding stress, even if you're ending the relationship. I think when we are getting ready to fire someone or to let them go, we have all this guilt and all these emotions that are tied into it. And we feel the need to keep talking. Like, it's really hard to be in control of your emotions and to speak clearly when you're ending a relationship with a client, because you're like, oh my God, I need to over explain. But that actually can kind of upset your clients. And what happened to me in this phone call with this person who was going to be a new team member and no longer is, because of all this stuff, was that it was an hour long of this person telling me why they had stressed themselves out so much over this position that was no doing of mine or anyone on my team. And I mean, the same statements were probably repeated 6 or 7 times about not sleeping or about not eating well and having their weekend ruined. And not to be selfish, but when you're ending a relationship with a client, it has ripple effects on them too, right? I interviewed 6 other people and made the call that those other people weren't the right fit for this position and hired this person instead, and spent a lot of time pulling together the job description and training this person and onboarding them and introducing them to my existing team. So there's fallout from a relationship that I thought was going to go somewhere, not going somewhere. Is it the end of the world? No, I can find somebody else. We'll replace it. It's a minor setback, right? But to be on the phone with a client of yours and go into a long, drawn out conversation of how your bad behavior has affected you and the choices you made have affected you makes your client feel really weird. Like, even though this person said like, oh, Laura, this wasn't your fault and all of that, it felt like it was my fault. It felt like I needed to take some responsibility because clearly there was some massive miscommunication and misunderstandings that took place. And it caused me to question everything about even the people I'm currently working with. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I coming across that way? It really put me in a very like shaky, weird feeling situation. So don't go into the dramatics. Like, you can give clear action points if a client doesn't understand why you're ending things. So, and even then I encourage you to be like clear, firm, but generic. Like, you don't need to tell your client, a family member of mine has gone into the nursing home, I need to be there 8 hours a day. Not that your clients wouldn't care, but you don't need to go into that level of personal detail in your life. You know, you can simply explain, unfortunately, I have some family commitments. I'm no longer able to do this job. I really apologize. I'd be happy to help through a transition period of XYZ so you can find somebody else, to minimize the blow to the client. Whether it's their fault or your fault, try to do that. If the client's a total disaster, won't leave you alone, this is why we have an exit clause in the contract. And you just say, I'm sorry, this is no longer a fit. I'm exercising the exit clause or the termination clause in the contract. Here are the things I'm working on for you. Do you want me to finish them, or should we wrap up today? Doing it professionally can either salvage these relationships if it hasn't gone too far south, or it at least allows for a clean professional break with no further drama. It's really a crappy position to put your clients in, to add drama and problems on their plate, even if they were the ones who caused the breakdown. So even if the client has been unbearable, they're emailing you every day, what's the status of this? And you've gently tried to reinforce those boundaries in the past and it hasn't worked. If you're coming to end the contract together, just be firm, but don't delve into all of the ways that this has affected you. You would be well within your rights to feel that way and to vent that way to your family and your friends, and even to acknowledge, you know, maybe what things the client did that didn't work for you, or things that you did that you're like, man, I'm disappointed in myself. I really screwed up there. Game on to do that with your friends and family when you're venting. But when it's a professional relationship, it's not doing you any favors to go into that level of detail, and especially to have a one-sided conversation about all the ways that this miscommunication has affected you, because it's going to affect both parties. Minimize the blow to your clients when you need to leave. So even when I have like a client who is not the best fit or is driving me a little bit crazy, I will usually say, you know, unfortunately, like today's March 26th. So I might say I can work through the end of the month, or I can wrap up by April 15th. And after that point, hopefully that'll give you some time to hire somebody else. If it's a decent client and I literally just don't have the bandwidth, I'll try to refer it to someone else, but never give a nightmare client to another freelancer. They will hate you for it. You will not have any freelance friends. So just, you know, give a way out to where it doesn't feel like you are making the client's life as difficult as possible. And I even said on this phone call, I wish we'd had a phone conversation sooner, because I feel like things got misinterpreted in email that we could have addressed in a phone call. And that also would have given me some lead time to see that this wasn't going to be the right fit and to find somebody who was a better fit for that role. But I know it's hard when you're ending a relationship as the freelancer or the client, because your emotions are tied up in it. And especially if you are a freelancer firing a client or ending the contract or whatever, you feel this sense of obligation, this sense of guilt, this like desire to do the right thing and not, shortchange the client. And what you do is you end up putting them in an even worse situation, because your attempt to talk things out and explain why you've come to the conclusion that you can no longer do this is adding pressure to them and may even cause them to question themselves. So for me, that was the most awkward part of the phone call I just got off, because the kind of poor explanation of why things went south made it seem as though I had done something unethical. And I had just never been in that position before where anyone had, I work with lawyers, like I take that kind of stuff so seriously. So that wasn't what was being said, but that certainly was how it felt in that moment. And it made me feel super awkward as the client. And it made me question everything. Like, have I ever made anyone else on my team feel like this, intentionally or unintentionally? So be aware of how you share your emotions. And this is why I say short and sweet. Like, we don't need to get into all the reasons why it's not going to work out or why you're going to end a relationship with a client. Just leave it firm and clear. Give them a date, give them an expectation of what they can anticipate between now and when the work wraps up. Like, you can say, right now I have 2 blog posts on my plate. I'm going to wrap those up and get those to you in the next 5 days. After that, I'll send the final invoice and we should be all set. Really clear, makes things super easy for the client. They're outsourcing because they're stressed and busy, and some combination of that as well. So don't add to their frustration. And if you do this the right way, there's minimal fallout. And Ashton says, I had to fire someone in our nonprofit organization. It was hard. I hate firing. I hate firing as a project manager. I hate firing people on my team. Like, you get more comfortable with it. And I hate firing clients too, because it's just like, now I've done it enough to where I'm more comfortable with the act of doing the firing. But there's always, my concern is always like, how is this person going to react to me? Are they going to push back? Because I've had clients before where they'll like try to sweeten the pot and get you to stay. And guess what? Every time you stay, the disasters and nightmares are still there. They may even be worse after you've tried to negotiate it out. And usually your gut is right. If your gut is telling you someone's not the right fit or a job is not the right fit, you're right. Oh yeah. And I think we've all had clients that we should have fired. I mean, just so many, like, we could talk all day about like the clients that you kept because you were scared you couldn't replicate the money, didn't want to let them down. Like, we're scared how they'd react if you tried to fire them. So I wanted to share this with you just to give you the perspective from the freelancer side and from the client side about having those difficult conversations. It's not easy for either party, and both of you, or all of you, if there's more than 2 people, are going to feel super awkward, but there's no need to drag it out. Like, in 30 minutes into this conversation, I even said, like, okay, I'm not really sure what else there is to say. I feel like everything that's been that needed to be expressed has been expressed. Of course, I had more personal feelings surrounding it, but just the freelancer in me that sticks to this guideline of like ending things firmly and professionally was just like, okay, this is done. There's nothing more to be gained by continuing this conversation. So be clear about your boundaries. It is okay to fire people, whether you are the client or the freelancer. It is okay to decide that a contract that's brand new is going to be dead in the water before it starts. And this relates to another topic I've been wanting to do a live on a lot, which is getting excited about stuff way before, like counting your chickens way before they hatch. And I'll cover that separately, because we get emotionally invested in a new client and we're like, yes, this person asked me for a proposal or a work sample or a phone call. It's a done deal. I'm already imagining the $1,000 a month retainer I'm going to get from this. And then, while it's good to celebrate and definitely celebrate your small wins, don't consider that a done deal. To me, no deal is done until the contract is signed and the money is paid. Even signed contracts where no money has exchanged hands can fall apart. Contracts can also fall apart when there's been a ton of money that has exchanged hands. So never count your chickens before they hatch. I think that's part of what happened in this situation, is that this person had turned down another gig because she was going to be working with me. And, it just had it in her mind that like this was like a promised income thing, and it easily could have been, but it fell apart for a couple of different reasons. And although I appreciated the honesty and the chance to back out of the contract and get a refund before we even began working together, the hour-long phone call was really unnecessary. And the emails that made me think like there was something, legally or ethically wrong with my business, just put me in a really awkward position as far as stress, and was unnecessary. So that, on top of being on a phone call, hearing about how this person's actions had affected them, it was like, well, it doesn't even seem like you're recognizing that it's affected me or it's affected my team, which is a disappointment. So if you have to let people go, please do it the right way. Like, even if you are livid with them, even if it is a nightmare client. I mean, I've had clients that the project was just too small to work with. I've also had clients where they just refused to respect boundaries, and it was a poor fit from the start, and I should have flagged it earlier on and didn't. And even then, like, my temptation, of course, was to be like, y'all are jerks. I'm done. I'm out. Don't ever contact me again. Don't do it. There's no reason to put that karma out into the world, even if it's legit on your part, even if the client deserves it. Don't do it. End it firmly and professionally, because you never know. Like, today's situation could have been one in which maybe we weren't the best fit for each other, but especially because I get asked questions all the time about referrals for virtual assistants and people who have expertise in doing things online. That could have been a situation where I could have referred business that person's way, because I knew that they were good at what they did, and it just wasn't a good fit with me. So I hope this live has been helpful to sort of explain the way that I think things through as a freelancer and as a client. And as you go into sales calls, firing conversations, boundary reinforcing calls, contract negotiations, you name it, the more that you can think about what the other person is thinking, the better you'll be prepared for that conversation. The less nerve-wracking it will be, the more confident you will come across, the smoother the communication, because it is a communication thing between two humans. And the ability to see somebody else's situation and fallout and perception is amazingly powerful in, personal life as well as professional life. So think about that. Even if this isn't right for you, what is the best way to minimize the problems for the client and to get out of this clearly? All right. Happy Monday, guys.